The spectacular Oregon coast is situated in the Pacific Northwest, just a 3-hour drive from Seattle, or a 1.5-hour drive from Portland. This is a coast where time is measured not in seconds, but by the tides, where years are measured in the fading patina of fishing floats, and centuries by the fall of rocky sea stacks and the rise of redwoods. A visit to the Oregon coast is more than just a trip to the seaside. It's a series of unforgettable moments strung together by one of the USA's great scenic drives, Highway 101. And thanks to visionary legislation enacted in 1967, Oregon's coastline, all 362 miles of it, offers free public access to all. Welcome to the People's Coast. Oregon's coast starts in the state's far north at Astoria, where the waters of the mighty Columbia roll into the Pacific. It was here in 1805, a year and a half after leaving St. Louis, that Lewis and Clark staggered out from the wilderness and shouted, "Ocean in view, oh joy!" Trek back in time at the Lewis and Clark National Historical Park. Here, a recreation of Fort Clatsop lets you experience the cramped quarters where the expedition hunkered down through a brutal winter before returning east. Oregon's oldest city has come a long way since 1805. But Astoria has never turned its back on its rough-hewn and sometimes rowdy past. Visit the Heritage Museum and learn about the region's first peoples and the fur traders, fishermen, and lumbermen who followed Lewis and Clark. Drop anchor at the Columbia River Maritime Museum, which honors the seafarers and fishermen who braved the Columbia Bar, which earned this stretch of coastline the name the Graveyard of the Pacific. Step into the now silent interiors of the Hanthorn Cannery, the last of the 22 canneries which once made Astoria the salmon canning capital of the world. But this city is no museum piece trading on past glories. Astoria is still a working port. So head down to the Riverwalk, where the jetty pylons of old are reclaimed by time and tide, and freighters slip off to ports unknown. This is where you'll find the true, timeless spirit of Astoria. From Astoria, the road trip begins. Just a 20-mile drive south is the town of Seaside, which marks the eastern end of the Lewis and Clark Trail. When the railway arrived in the late 1800s, the town boomed, becoming Oregon's first coastal resort. While the beer, menu items, and streetscapes may have changed with the times, Seaside's natural gifts have been a reassuring constant throughout history's ebb and flow. 10 miles south of Seaside is Ecola State Park. Follow trails through old-growth forest and along cliff tops where offshore stacks, ribbons of beach, and the heart-calming rhythm of wind and sea beckon you further down the coast. A little further south is the coastal town of Cannon Beach, home to iconic Haystack Rock. Call into the History Center to see the city's namesake, a cannon which washed ashore in the 1800s. Catch a performance at the local theater, or just wander along the weather-worn perfection of this place where salt lingers in every shingle and every grain of wood. Before Oregon's coastal highway was built in the 1930s, stagecoaches raced along the sands from Cannon Beach all the way down to Cape Arch, hugging the headlands to beat the incoming tides. To appreciate the bravery of Oregon's early road builders, follow the highway through Oswald West State Park, where forests tumble toward the Pacific and scenic pullovers offer heart-stopping views down the coast for miles. Once back at sea level, sink your toes into the sand in beachside towns like Manzanita and Rockaway Beach. Or grab a paddle and throw in a line at the historic riverside timber towns of Nehalem and Wheeler. A few miles on, the coast arcs inland around Tillamook Bay to the port of Garibaldi. Take a ride on the scenic railway or just hang out by the docks. This is the kind of place where the best thing to do is relax. From Garibaldi, mosey around the bay to Tillamook, the bustling gateway to the Three Capes Scenic Loop. If you're short on time, this 40-mile loop makes for an easy day trip from Portland and is the perfect sampler of all that's special about the Oregon coast. For those with more time, the road unwinds ever south through Pacific City, around Cascade Head, and onto the sands of Rhodes End, the start of Oregon's central coast. Call into the North Lincoln County Historical Museum, which celebrates the pioneers of old and the early vacationers of the Central Coast. And check out the collection of foreign fishing floats, lost at sea and carried by wind and wave to Lincoln shores. Those floats were onto something, for there are few finer places to wash up than Lincoln, where one perfect day fades into the next. You'll find even more perfection a further 20 minutes down the coast at JBay, where whale watch cruises put out to sea from the world's smallest navigable harbor. If you're not the seafaring type, you'll find plenty of opportunities to spot whales below the highway south from JBay, which offers some of the Central Coast's most dramatic scenery. After 6 miles of twists and turns, pull over for a breather at the tiny hamlet of Otter Rock and peer into the Devil's Punch Bowl. Then rent a wetsuit and board and hit the waves in the Marine Reserve below. From Otter Rock, the sands stretch away for miles to Yaquina Head, home to the tallest of Oregon's 11 lighthouses. Lose a dreamy hour or 3 exploring the rock pools beneath the lighthouse. And when the tide returns, take to higher ground just down the coast in Newport. Newport is home to miles of sands, 2 lighthouses, a marine research center, and a working bayfront, complete with barking sea lions and circling gulls. If ever there was a city with salt in its veins, surely this is it. The salty flavors continue just across the Yaquina Bay Bridge at South Beach, where you'll find the best fish and chips on the entire coast. 10 minutes down the highway, keep a lookout for Seal Rock, an enchanting haven for artists and a rest stop for seabirds on their long migrations to far-off shores. The magic continues in Yachats, a town wedged between the Siaslaw National Forest and the sea. Here, life's challenges are reduced to what flavor ice cream to choose and whether to bait your hook with clam necks or sandworms. Three miles down the highway, don't miss the turnoff to Cape Perpetua. Here, at the highest viewpoint on the Oregon coast accessible by car, take in views that extend 40 miles out to sea. After exploring the dizzy heights of Cape Perpetua, head a little further down the coast to Sea Lion Point, which offers views north to Heceta Head, all the way south to the mouth of the Siaslaw River. But the main attraction here is the 200-foot elevator ride down into the fascinating and whiffy world of Sea Lion Caves, the largest sea cave system in America. Discover another of nature's oddities just 6 miles away at the Darlingtonia State Natural Site, an 18-acre reserve blanketed with patches of the rare carnivorous cobra lily. After taking in the dizzying heights, subterranean layers, and primordial wonders of the Central Coast, kick back in Florence, where the living is easy. With its Art Deco bridge, old-timey vibes, and calm waters, it's easy to see why people retire here, to spend their days happily checking crab pots and playing with the grandkids on the silver sands. From Florence, it's just a 20-mile run down Highway 101 to Reedsport, the gateway to Oregon's southern coast and the Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area. After exploring the dunes, shake the sand out of your shoes at Coos Bay, the largest natural harbor between San Francisco and Seattle. Spend an hour or 2 at the Coos Historical Museum and follow the bay's European story from its castaway beginnings to its heyday as the largest timber port in the world. Just a short drive away is the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve. Spend an afternoon in this 6,000-acre park on the Coos Estuary, a vital nursery for all marine and bird life, and a veritable pantry for the region's first peoples for thousands of years. Coos Bay is also close to another of the coast's great scenic loops, which takes in a trio of stunning state parks, including Cape Arago, which offers views to seal and sea lion colonies just offshore. After exploring the intertidal and coastal treasures around Coos Bay, follow the winds of adventure south to Bandon by the Sea, one of Oregon's coolest and craftiest coastal towns. Throw in a crab pot from Weber's Pier, and while you're waiting for your dinner, walk up to Coquille Point to feast on the endless views. From here, the southern coast stretches away for another 90 wild miles south, all the way to the Californian border. Whether you visit just one part of the Oregon coast for a weekend or take a month to explore its entire length, every cove and trail, every wisp of sea mist will greet you like a long-lost friend. For these are your sunsets, and these are your shores. Welcome home to the People's Coast.
Well, I have read as a child books about the Whitbread race at the time, and the sailing magazines, the films, and it's inspired me tremendously. I'm super happy that we are now starting the race. I want this race to become part of the IMOCA class, our sailing race boat class from the Vendée Globe, and 2026 and then ongoing. I think really there can be something very strong if we have an agenda with both races around the world linking together. And And that's basically driving me to do this one. And this is now 2/3 done. All the design work is finished, even all the details. We have already most of the ropes made with their little labels and their little color code and all that's already hanging in the container. And we have a launch on the 19th July in Lorient. And then we want to get this boat going as quickly as possible. Well, for me, that was a very natural thing. We have already, in the past years or decades on the IMOCAs, we have always been sailing with crews. Even like 15 years ago, there was a Europe race to Istanbul where there were 5 on board. And we had seen last summer that there was the Ocean Race Europe, which went fabulously with 5 people on board, 4 sailors and 1 onboard reporter. And so for me, there was a very positive surprise last summer again to see the feedback from these teams that had done it, and they were very happy with the even reduced space and ergonomy that an IMOCA has compared to a more traditional Volvo 65 boat, which is traditionally for bigger crews. And I therefore don't see any contradiction between both uses. For me, it's exactly the same boat. The big thing was that we are allowed to use autopilots in the Ocean Race. That means we don't have to think about a big steering wheel position, and that would have been a tremendous change compared to the Vendée Globe. That is not the case. That's not something we need to worry about. So we will sail the boat in a very similar way, mostly under autopilot. And for the Vendée Globe, I wanted to have a protected cockpit with a lot of windows and view and space to sleep next to the winch, where I have a kind of bench or bunk both sides in the cockpit. So I can sleep right next to the coffee grinder under all these windows. And that has kind of been a strong desire coming up in the last Vendée Globe. And this is also perfect for crew. Then 2 people can sit on the bench and 1 at the coffee grinder, and there's enough space for everyone. So I'm really looking forward to exploring this. This is the first boat design that I have been involved with. I have been heavily involved. I pushed a lot in one direction to go for a real offshore boat that is more tolerant to sea state and hopefully can go better through big waves and big sea state. So we will not just out of the box see like a flying ultra machine that is faster than anyone else. We will hopefully see a boat that is robust, safe, and that also can take me around the world in the Vendée Globe in the best condition and in the best average speeds in even very difficult sea conditions in the south. So this was the focus for the boat. And on the Ocean Race, maybe you would have put the cursor a little bit more towards an all-round boat, but who knows? We will find out where we stand in the competition, and hopefully, anyway, this is not the last boat we build and not the last Ocean Race we do with the new boat.
June 8th, 632. The Prophet Muhammad, who founded the religion of Islam, dies in Medina, part of what's now Saudi Arabia. Muhammad leaves no arrangement for a successor, creating a rift within Islam which lasts to this day. 1968. Authorities announced the capture in London of James Earl Ray, wanted for assassinating Martin Luther King Jr. Ray spends the rest of his life behind bars after pleading guilty to killing the civil rights leader. He later recants, claiming a conspiracy targeted King. 1967. 34 U.S. servicemen are killed when Israeli forces raid the Liberty, a Navy ship stationed in the Mediterranean. Israel calls the attack, which takes place during the Six-Day War in the Mideast, a tragic mistake. 1869. Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the great American architects of the 20th century, is born in Richland Center, Wisconsin. And 1969. The New York Yankees retire Mickey Mantle's uniform number 7. Mantle, known to baseball fans as the Mick, pays tribute to another Yankee legend.
I've often wondered how a man who knew he was going to die could stand here and say that he was the luckiest man in the world. But now I think I know how Lou Gehrig felt.
Today in History, June 8th. Tim McGuire, The Associated Press.
Welcome back in our studio, and in today's news,